Hi, my name is David Ruben. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 13 bankruptcy. What is Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Well, there are two kinds of bankruptcies that consumers file as opposed to businesses, and those are Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. I have Chapter 7 on another video if you want to watch that one. But Chapter 13 bankruptcy is a kind of bankruptcy that's used generally for three reasons. The first reason that people file Chapter 13, and the most common, is if you are behind on your mortgage and you are facing a foreclosure, meaning you haven't paid your mortgage for some period of time. They're usually not accepting payments anymore, even if you do have the money to pay it, and the bank has hired a lawyer to foreclose on your property. And we get calls a couple times a week of people that are going to lose their house. They want to save it. Chapter 13 bankruptcy will automatically save your home once you file. You can file it 2 months before a foreclosure. You can file it 2 minutes before a foreclosure. It will automatically stop the foreclosure and allow you to keep your home. When you do that, as with any Chapter 13, whether it's for different reasons or this reason, what you're doing is you're working out a payment plan. Whereas in Chapter 7, the more simple kind of bankruptcy, you're just wiping out your debt and getting a fresh start, and it's over and done quickly. A Chapter 13 is a little different than that. It's more of a payment plan. We call it a reorganization bankruptcy. It's the bankruptcy court saying, we're going to give you a second chance. We understand that you fell behind for whatever reason that might be, whether it's because you lost your job and you weren't able to pay your mortgage for a period of time, or you got sick, or you went through a divorce and things happened and you weren't able to pay it. But now you're back on your feet and you have increased your income, or you've got renters or something like that, and now you want to stay in your house, which most people want to do. You can file this Chapter 13. And what happens is you file, you stop the foreclosure, and you pay back that money over a 5-year period of time. In other words, you take that money that you haven't paid and you pay it through the bankruptcy court by what we call a trustee, and you pay it back over a 3 to 5 year period of time, depending on how much that debt is and how much money you make. That's what the payment will be. But you also can address other things in a Chapter 13. If you have unsecured debt, like credit cards or medical bills, you can address those as well. And typically what happens in a Chapter 13 with those is you pay some of them back. Some of them meaning depending on how much you can afford on a monthly basis, or depending on how much equity there might be in your home, is how much of that debt you're going to have to pay back. Now that's very complicated, and it will only take a conversation with me or someone from my office to listen to what your particular facts are and explain it to you and try to give you an idea of how your Chapter 13 will work. So that's the number one kind of bankruptcy, for Chapter 13 bankruptcy, to stop a foreclosure. One of the other kinds of Chapter 13 bankruptcy is when you make too much money. When we talked about Chapter 7, we said there's something called a means test. And if you're below the means test, you can file a 7 and wipe out all your debt. But if you make too much money, and that's generally the household income, so if you and your spouse combined make a lot of money and you don't qualify for a 7, you do a 13. And similar to the 13 when there's a foreclosure, how much of our debt do we pay back? Well, you pay back what you can afford. So in a lot of ways, that kind of Chapter 13 bankruptcy is like a consolidation loan, only most of the time it's better than that, because you're not going to pay interest anymore. You're going to have a definite period of time that you pay back that debt, and you're only going to pay back what you can afford to pay back. So that's what frequently people do to file a Chapter 13, or they do that often. The final kind of Chapter 13 bankruptcy is even if you don't make a lot of money and you're not facing foreclosure, but you have a lot of property, meaning you have $100,000, for example, in equity in your home. Well, you can't file Chapter 7 because you can only keep a certain amount of property in a Chapter 7. So you don't want to lose your home, so you have to file a Chapter 13, and you're going to pay back a certain amount of debt based on what you can afford and also based on how much equity you have in your home. So those are the three kinds of situations that people file Chapter 13 bankruptcies. You're actually allowed to file Chapter 13 often. If you filed before, that doesn't mean you can't file again. There are some rules and things that apply to that, and we'll talk to you about that on the phone. But unlike a Chapter 7 where you can only file every 8 years, that's different for a Chapter 13. So if you have questions about a Chapter 13, if you're facing foreclosure, if you have too much debt and you can't afford to pay it and you don't qualify for a 7, give us a call. We'll talk about it. You're welcome to call me, email me, set up a free consultation in my office. We'll talk about it and we'll see if we can help you.